If you'll notice, you don't hear me through the speaker tonight. We have a little bit of a hiccup with that. So if those of y'all in the back can't hear us, maybe move forward a little bit. But my understanding is we are being picked up on TV. So that's important so those at home can hear us. But as for the room, we're not being picked up here to be broadcast in the speakers of the room. So with that, call the meeting to order, and we'll do roll call. Teresa, if you would call roll.
Robin Fisher.
Here.
Robert Jordan.
Here.
Kendall Moore.
Here.
Josiah Gattle.
Here.
John Weiler.
Here.
James Minus.
Here.
Yvonne Minus.
Here.
Henry Minaboo.
Here.
Todd Pokriva.
Here.
Sue Schmidt.
Here.
Steve Crisafulli.
Here.
Jason Steele.
Here.
Let the record show we do have a quorum. However, Susan Hodgers, David Workman, and Yvonne Minus are not present at this time.
Yvonne's here.
Or, I'm sorry,
And Susan's here.
She just popped in.
Alberta Wilson is not present.
All right, members, show that we have a quorum. And at this time, we're not going to approve minutes because we don't have them yet. As you know, these minutes have to be dictated word for word, and it takes a little bit of time, so we'll push that to the next meeting if we do have one, or if y'all feel real anxious tonight, we might get something done here. So with that, before we get started, I'd like James to just talk through what's different with the maps that are sitting on your desk versus the maps that you took home last week.
Okay, yeah, I guess if you guys could all go to Robert Jordan's maps as an example. There's a couple changes that with the data sheet. As you can see, the top table, we added percentages to all the demographic information, just to make it easier for you guys. And then the second table is by district, the changes in total population and demographics from the existing districts with the 2020 data to the proposed change for those particular plans. And then you can also see in the proposed change areas, we also included the demographics for each proposed change area. So, for example, under Robert Jordan's plan, the proposed change area number 1 would have a total population change of 8,884 with 632 Hispanics, 7,423 white people, etc. But those demographics are specifically from pertaining to those change areas from one district to another. As far as the maps go, we added down by the voting precinct display, we also added a city boundary display, which will allow you to see the municipalities' boundaries, in that window to make it easier to see if a change area, is involved with a city boundary or not. Also, we changed the symbology of the current district boundaries in the main map. Instead of light green that seemed hard to see in some areas, we changed that to a solid black line. We still have the county location display, but that is up in the right-hand corner of the main view, so you can kind of see where in the county that the main view window is. One thing we also, as far as GIS material goes, that we sent you a link to, is we created this Redistricting Interactive Map, which will allow you to, similar to Google Maps, change or be able to view everybody's proposed plans and be able to zoom into particular neighborhoods and areas similar to Google Maps, so you can view these plans in a little more detail than the paper maps can provide. So that's another thing we'll keep updated after each meeting. Say we have more plans coming in, I will load them into here, and then we'll resend this link out after each meeting. That way you can have all the GIS material at your fingertips for outside of the meetings.
All right, very good. Any questions for James on the remake of the maps as far as defining the lines and what you see I think you changed some colors on a couple things too. Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, the voting precincts would have changed to green color
Yep.
as well.
Okay. So it should help you identify it a little easier, when you first glance at it. So that's obviously very helpful. Also, last meeting, there was some questions on, the history of majority-minority districts and case law and different things like that. And Abby did a little bit of research on that and want to give her an opportunity to address the committee prior to us getting into a discussion. Just let us know what her findings were.
Yes, and good evening, everybody. So since our last meeting last week, we did look into just looking at some of the local cases, if there were any cases involving counties specifically. We did find a few county cases in Florida that were looking at redistricting plans as far as creating a majority-minority district or a district that's really a minority-influenced district. There are not too many cases. However, I would note that the cases really are addressing county-specific issues. Just to give you the list of the counties, it included Washington County, DeSoto, and we also had one out of Osceola County. But these cases largely were addressing issues that the county either had identified themselves or constituents were contesting an already adopted plan. And really what I took away from the three cases regarding this issue is that they're also still looking at the seminal cases that we had talked about before that the Supreme Court has come down in regarding majority-minority districts as a proposal. And that really comes down to the fact that we're looking at the Voting Rights Act, racial neutrality, and government decision-making. And recall when we last spoke about that, we talked about how you cannot subordinate the traditional districting principles of compactness, contiguity, and the other issues that we're supposed to look at, keeping the municipalities together, the natural man-made boundaries and roadways, cohesive racial and ethnic communities, keeping those as our target redistricting tools, if you would say, out of our toolbox. You really cannot subordinate those to just using race as your only tool in redistricting. And really the proposal of majority-minority district has been addressed by the United States Supreme Court in quite a few cases. And these local cases really kept going back to those main seminal cases. And I just wanted to read from you one particular United States Supreme Court case I thought really synthesized the whole issue down to really tell us what they're looking for. And it's in Shaw v. Reno. This is an older case. It's from 1993, but it did involve a majority-minority district proposal and the court looking at it. And they basically said, and this is a quote, a reapportionment plan or redistricting plan that includes in one district individuals who belong to the same race, but who are otherwise widely separated by geographical and political boundaries, and who may have little in common with one another but the color of their skin, bears an uncomfortable resemblance to political apartheid. It says, it goes on to say, it reinforces the perception that members of the same racial group, regardless of their age, education, economic status, or the community in which they live, think alike, share the same political interests, and will prefer the same candidates at the polls. And the court basically says we have rejected that principle. So it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is that if you're going to do a majority-minority district, it really needs to be identifying similar communities of interest, communities that have similar issues confronting them. You cannot just say, well, this one race, we put them all in one district, that they'll have the same issues. You really need to look at it as if they have the same issues confronting them. That way they elect one district commissioner that can address those issues that are confronting that particular group. And so the court went on to say that, they rejected that concept unless you can show that you're making a district that really addresses that particular racial group's issues. And so we go back to, you can use race as a tool, but you still also have to look at compactness, contiguity, the municipal boundaries. You have your natural man-made boundaries as well, roadways, and then cohesive racial and ethnic communities. And that actually is right out of our charter. And just really trying to preserve those communities and not just subordinate those traditional redistricting tools to just a race. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the boundaries and looking at what you may want to do with your maps. Keep in mind that you have to eventually show that you have that similar community interest, those issues that are confronting that one particular community if you are looking to do a majority-minority district. Because obviously, if there is one that's created, there's strict scrutiny because we're supposed to use, racial neutrality in our government decision-making. So if there is a situation where race is used, at that point in time, there's a higher standard that will be held to by the courts when they evaluate it if it's ever called into question.
Okay. Any questions?
I have a motion, Mr. Chairman. Based on the position of the county attorney and based on the opinion that she just gave, I believe that I move that we eliminate the Vaughn minus Plan A map from the group.
Okay. Have a motion on the table?
Second.
Have a second? Discussion?
Mr. Chair, for one discussion, Abby, just for clarity, based on Mr. Steele, I don't think you were passing an opinion on an existing map or proposal that's before this committee. And so unless you're telling me that your legal conclusion is such as Mr. Steele just arrived at, that ultimately this falls outside of some established legal bounds, is that
You
the
saw me-
case that you intended to convey?
You saw me sneak away from the podium. I tried. I really did. Essentially, my advice is just to give you the tools to work with. So no, not necessarily passing an opinion on a particular plan. I wanted to give the committee the tools to actually make that determination. So a majority-minority district, if you recall that memo I had previously given the committee back in August, I provided a couple cases where they were upheld and some cases where they were not upheld. And once again, just really the guidepost is what the courts are looking for. Race can be used. It's a stricter scrutiny if it ever is contested, but it cannot be the sole lens that you are redistricting a particular district into. That cannot be the only factor. It should be the traditional concepts of contiguity and compactness and communities of shared interests. So it has to be a plan that also has those fundamental redistricting tools applied.
Mr. Chairman, I say to my kind gentleman that I work with every day, Mr. Steele, Mr. Pagriwa, in respect to your point, I may not agree with everything that the new minus proposal has. I also don't believe that the conclusion from what the attorney just presented is that the map by its nature meets a threshold that she's established that it should be thrown out based upon that purpose. So I'll be voting no just on that simple proposition.
And to clarify, you said the new map. I think he had mentioned Plan A, which was the one from last week. Okay,
I still
okay.
don't think the attorney intended to opine on any
Okay.
of the maps, A or B, that the difference between them has somehow magically gone above or below.
Okay.
You know what
I just wanted to clarify because you had said
Chairman.
that. Yes, sir.
Please, thank you very, very much, and I understand your position. However, there is additional reasons for eliminating this map, and if you look at the map, it does not really go upon any boundaries. It really doesn't. It crosses over. It's a complete gerrymander of the district, and it makes no sense. And even if it wasn't over the minority issue or the minority opinion, this map just doesn't work. And, I mean, in all respect to Councilwoman Minus, it's just a gerrymandered map that I believe would not hold its weight in court.
Okay. And again, members, we're on Plan A that was presented last week. It is my understanding that Ms. Minus has a new plan that she will have absolutely the opportunity to present. But since the motion came forward and we have a second, we are in discussion on, whether that map.
Just one,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Steele, I actually agree with you on the three conclusions that you drew from it, just not on throwing it out, you know what I mean, on that basis.
I probably should have worded my motion a little differently.
That's perfectly fine.
Yes, Mr. Fisher?
Chairman, just seemed like to me that the board will have a decision on what maps they want to vote on, so I'm not sure there's any value in throwing any of them out. We'll come, all of them are going to get thrown out at the end of the day, but one, so.
Well, I would tell you that maybe all of them do get thrown out, and we use one as a base map to work from. And I think that's what tonight's discussion is going to be about, whether we come up with one to work from, or two to work from, or three to work from. That's obviously the purview of this committee. But at some point, we're going to have to narrow it down to remove some maps from discussion, clearly. But, and as I did, last week, I just said mine was so close to Mr. Brevia's that we could use his. So I pulled mine back, and of course, there was no motion on that, but certainly, somebody could bring it forward again. It's just, I do think we're going to have a process of pulling some of these back. And again, it's the pleasure of this committee on how we want to go about that. It's been an all-inclusive committee, movement to think through this and talk about it. So, we are in discussion on a motion that was made, and maybe you want to rephrase your motion based on why we're pulling that map, or, whatever it is. It's
The
just
results
for
of the
purposes.
motion are going to
Yes, it's the result of the
resolve
motion.
the issue no matter what. So, I mean, we can go back to it if you want, but I think my motion's fine at this point.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Jordan?
I got uncomfortable with what you were saying, even though I agree with you. Okay, I'll be honest with you, and you heard me at the
Sure.
last meeting for sure. But to me, I think it was just premature to do it now when we haven't had a discussion, because we have to discuss all of these and see where it ends up. So I would respectfully request that maybe we just forget about this motion and just go forward and whatever process we have of eliminating, let's do that, but let's not just pull one out and say, okay, because of this reason, we just need to get rid of it. That would hurt my feelings, to be honest with you, because if you were making a motion to pull mine out, I would have a problem with that, and you would know it. But I'm just saying, to me, it's going to be a moot point anyhow once we go through these things, integrate some and subtract some, and you may end up with exactly what you're looking for in the first place. So that's where I am.
Ms. Schmidt?
Yeah, I would ask the person that seconded and the person that made the motion to just withdraw those temporarily. I think
Ms. Schmidt,
everyone...
can you speak up, just because we don't have speakers in here? So the microphone's only working for the TVs, so.
I happen to agree with what you're saying, but I think that anyone that submitted a plan and that we have those plans tonight and wishes to be heard on their plan, at that point, if they are heard on their plan, then we can have the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll withdraw my motion.
All right, show that motion withdrawn. Members, before we move on, are there any further questions for Abby as to the topic that she spoke of with regard to the cases that she found, the issue in general? Yes, Ms. Hodges.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
That doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not working, so just speak loud.
All right. This is a question to Abby to clarify, not only to Ms. Minus's map. Is there any of the proposals is there anything that would possibly cause a lawsuit or open us up to liability for any of the proposals in addition to Ms. Minus's proposal, including all the proposals?
So as far as a lawsuit, we can be contested on any map, essentially. That is really a hard evaluation for me to make. Just keep in mind that if race becomes a component of a redistricting plan, if that is challenged, it has to be a challenge. At that point in time, there is that higher scrutiny that the court will apply because of the insertion of race as one of the components of the redistricting plan. So if this committee wanted to recommend a majority-minority district, you definitely can. There have been some that have been upheld. It's just really following the guidance that we do have from the Supreme Court as to how we use race as one of the components of drawing that district. But as far as all the other plans, there may be something I have not even considered that someone may raise as an issue. And I've seen redistricting plans where, specifically one of the cases in the local cases that we looked at, I think it was Washington County, one of the cases that were local, it was raised the fact that the districting had occurred and the plaintiffs were upset because they didn't have a majority in one of the districts, so they raised that issue. The court, once again, just looked at the plans through the lens of redistricting and whether the group actually followed the requirements of contiguous, compactness, and determined that it wasn't necessarily necessary to have a district that's, a majority-minority district. That doesn't necessarily cure all ails. Sometimes that actually can work contrary to what is proposed, because if you make the assumption one race is going to vote one way, and then you have that, it could be that you have very different concepts. If you have different education status, different individuals, and then that race is actually diluted in regards if they're not maintained the way they currently are. And that's just the way the courts look at it. So it's very, very detail-oriented as far as what the courts look at. And truthfully, I wish I could tell you, I wish I had a magic ball as far, that ability to see what a court would look at and to see what a lawsuit would be filed on these plans. But I just don't have that. I can give you the guidance that I have from the Supreme Court as far as the federal cases that we have. But, that is really what we're working with.
All right, further questions before we move on? Yes, Ms. Minus?
Okay, thank you for my time. I'd like to ask our attorney, do we have a strong basis in the evidence for the majority-minority district, and this could work, right?
There have been plans that have been upheld. So what the courts look at, they want to see, that you're using still the traditional tools of redistricting, that you're looking at keeping them compact, contiguous. And then if you insert race, that you're not just saying it's, oh, you're of this ethnicity or this race, so you vote this way. You have to have that community of shared interests where they're looking at, whether they have the same economic issues, the same schools, same libraries, same, same group of people that are actually having similar issues that are confronting them. And so they're trying to see it from a perspective that, if that one quote I just read, are they separated by a large geography? Are they in the same area? Are they confronted by the same issues? So that's what the courts are looking for. So it's kind of, that needs to be fleshed out. Usually that's what happens with the courts. They start to look at how that decision was made, how that plan came about, and why. What was the ailment that they were trying to correct as far as proposing this proposal? I don't know if that helps a little bit more.
Yes, it does. The why is that if we look at it at our county commission now, okay, there's no representation. And I think that's the bottom line on what we're trying to get to. Per our charter, that's what it says. Evidently, we're not following the charter, and we haven't followed it in, 100 years? Evidently. It was troubling to see that, this is targeted first to be removed. Okay, that's an issue. That's an issue for me, to be, thrown out. Yeah, like you said, hey, throw mine out, but that's an issue for me. But I'll leave it alone.
Okay.
Okay, because I'm getting worked
All right,
up.
members, any further questions for Abby? All right, so moving forward, before we get into trying to, narrow things down, as I mentioned, Ms. Minus did come up with another plan since our meeting, and so I'm going to give her a chance to present that, just like everybody else had an opportunity to present their maps last week. And after she presents that map, obviously we can ask the questions and do the things that we need to do with her on that map. And then we're going to move forward to a process of trying to narrow things down to come up with a plan for Brevard County for the next 10 years. Keeping in mind that, we know where our opportunities are for population growth. We know that there are certain opportunities in, current districts that don't exist in other districts, whether it be the beach side or, the island or, what have you. So, we're going to have to factor that into the decision as we move forward on understanding that there's going to be continued population growth. It's not a criteria of this committee, but it's certainly something we should be, considering as we do move forward. I hope that we can have a constructive conversation, obviously, in an effort of without offending anybody's feelings and knowing that at the end of the day, we have a job to do. And we're not all going to agree on everything, But at the end of the day, what we want is for our communities to be best represented by the member that represents them and gets elected to represent them. And, you know, I would tell you that I think that every district, without question, is going to have a diverse group that they're going to represent, regardless of whether it's District 1 or District 5. So it's going to be up to this committee to decide how we're going to move forward with that. So with that, one other change, we had a meeting scheduled, again, if we need to get there, for next Monday, the 11th. That has now been moved to Monday, the 18th. So make a note of that due to challenge with attendance. So the next meeting would be the 18th. Now, I will tell you that puts us on a very tight time frame. So, you know, we need to be, if we don't get out of here tonight with something and we need to come back on the 18th, we will need to come out of here with something that night. Whether we got to arm wrestle for it or whatever it is, we're going to have to come out of here for it. So, so with that, Ms. Minus, if you would, present your Plan B.
Okay, Plan B, not sure if everyone received the, here. Okay, I think we were looking at the compactness, and from the compactness, I think it was 16, and now that is 18. Looking at District 1, we took out MEMS, didn't include MEMS on this one. I think it was originally. So this is District 1, to look at it all the way down to Rockledge. Okay. And just trying to
What
include
happened to NIMS?
What happened to MEMS? Yeah. Okay, no, we're not going to include that on there.
Let her present it and then we'll ask her
I
questions.
just want to know what
Yeah.
happened to NIMS.
Yeah. It's a different map than Plan A. So
Yes.
I think it's a matter of explaining, you know, this map, not comparing it to Plan A, but explain this map on its face. That's it.
Yes, yes. So,
Williams is in District 1?
Yeah. MIMS is in District 1.
yes, it is
yeah.
in District 1.
Okay.
Okay, that's all.
It is.
Oh, yeah. I think
Okay. District 2, you look at District 2, that includes the Cape Canaveral area all the way up to the coast on District 2. District 3, that is the district of which I represent. And let's see, that has been bordered to the coastline. Okay, all the way down to the county line, if you will. District 4 is intact. It will not be split, touched, separated, divided, or anything per the request on that one. And District 5 will pretty much stay the same to on the coast to the county line. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know. But it's not changed that much.
All right, members, questions for Ms. Minus on her Plan B? Mr. Gallo?
Ms. Minus, if you had to choose one of your plans for us to consider, which would you prefer us consider as your best plan?
Which plan, A or B?
Yes.
Yes, B.
B? Okay.
Yes. Okay. We look at also, if I may, Mr. Chair, we look at the other changes in the bottom spreadsheet. We have the white and non-Hispanic from 53 to 97%. And the minority is 46.03. So that population is at 119,985. So, which is actually dropped. Okay, so that is in consideration and being addressed. So, but just asking for consideration.
Mr. Weiler?
If I read the map correctly on the page where you have District 2 and Cape Canaveral being eliminated, the problem I have is Cape Canaveral is an island then, separated, because there is nothing in that higher part over at Kennedy's Bend. There's no voting, there's no population there, okay? So Cape Canaveral is just a little island separated from the rest of District 2 and definitely separated from the rest of District 1. It's always been part of District 2. It's a small area as it is. It doesn't seem that that's, from a contiguous standpoint, it makes any sense at all to have it as part of District 1 and not staying as part of District 2. And appears that, if I'm looking at it right, because James, there's no precincts on here like you have on the other maps, so I can't tell. But it appears that essentially all of Cocoa is now District 1. Or, I'm sorry, see if I can understand it right. Let me turn to the big page here.
It's District 3 now.
I'm sorry, District 3, that's what I meant. And that would be a
Yeah, put that in.
tremendous change from a contiguous area that's there today and respecting the boundaries that are currently in place. So that one doesn't make me particularly anxious to support.
Okay. Further questions for Ms. Minus on Plan B?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I would like the record to reflect that I certainly was not targeting Ms. Minus's Plan A. That is absolutely not even close to what I was doing. These boundaries need to be drawn along lines that are cohesive with what the redistricting rules are. Plan A and Plan B make no sense in regards to any of the boundaries and any of the lines. I mean, you've got cities that are split, you've got counties, you've got a whole thing, and when you're looking at this map, District 3 has no ocean front or beach front, District 4 has no ocean front, no beach front, and it completely just throws a monkey wrench in the entire way that we've been working in Brevard County for the last 10 years. So I'm not sure that this is a cohesive map. I understand why Ms. Minus is doing this, and I have no problem with what Ms. Minus is doing. What I have a problem with is that it doesn't meet the rules and regulations of what redistricting is all about. It doesn't go along boundary lines, it doesn't go along road lines, and as an issue that is, in my opinion, going to be not upheld by the courts. So I can't support either Plan A or Plan B. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to jump off where Mr. Steele left off. In terms of what we're looking at, Abby outlined what we should be focusing on with respect to compactness, existing municipalities, natural boundaries, major roadways, and that would be my concern as well with Plan A and Plan B that Councilwoman Minus had presented. Rewinding to our last meeting, we had a number of different proposals. They're here today along with a couple other revisions, and there was recognition by you, Mr. Chairman, and myself as it related to Mr. Weiler's proposal that they were very similar, and they also incorporated a lot of other committee members' comments from our meeting second to last. So I said I didn't need to review my Plan A because it mirrored Mr. Weiler's, because we both took into consideration this committee's feedback during that discussion, the meeting before last. And Mr. Chairman, you said something similar as it related to my plan. So I believe that Mr. Weiler's plan that he presented has taken into account the feedback of many of the committee members. Mr. Mr. Jordan's plan, during our last meeting, you had noted my concern about Vieira and not breaking it up. But the proposal before us from you still shows that being broken up.
That's because I didn't modify it, but I was in agreement with it.
Right.
And in fact, I actually was in agreement with the chairman's, inclusive of your request.
Okay.
So that's where I was going to go tonight.
No, thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Yeah.
A few things I want to note. District 4 is going to continue to see substantial growth. Based upon the Vieira Company's projections, being conservative, we're looking at approximately 1,000 people per year being added to that district. And that's being conservative based upon the Vieira Company's current projections. So it makes sense, even if it's done modestly, to somewhat underpopulate District 4. It'll probably be a bigger issue during redistricting in 10 years. And I said this before, I believe that at that point, what District 4 becomes is really Suntree, Vieira, and Baytree proper. That the numbers wouldn't dictate a larger area than that. And I think over time, it just wouldn't make sense if we're looking at this from a compactness perspective to break up those communities in order to include some of the areas that are further east and beachside within District 4. But I believe we can get there incrementally, trying to stay as true to the current boundaries as possible. Mr. Weiler's plan only moved South Patrick Shores from District 4 to District 2. And Satellite Beach, Indian Harbor Beach remained in District 4 in his proposal, which again is very similar to my proposal, if not the same. It doesn't make wholesale changes and focuses on population. So from a compactness perspective, it achieves that goal. It also underpopulates District 4, again, somewhat modestly, and in 10 years, I think that needs to be addressed again. So I would make a motion that we accept Mr. Weiler's maps, his proposal, as our base map.
Okay, Ms. Hodgers had a second, so let's have a discussion. Ms. Schmidt?
I would like to know, on the beach side, in your plan, you've eliminated Satellite Beach from District 2. That's correct, right?
It's not currently in District 2. It's currently
No.
in District 4,
No.
and it would stay there in my
But what you
proposal.
would do is then add the unincorporated area.
Just the unincorporated.
Right. And then on the mainland, I brought up the last meeting about the Springs of Suntree, which are not part of the PUD, and also Cape Ron Trace, which is to the west of the Springs of Suntree. I'm sorry, I don't talk that loud.
That's all right, I'm trying to hear.
Okay.
We're all putting up with it.
And
I don't hear it well
to
either.
pick up a little bit of population at that point, but it doesn't overload District 4 at that point. Are you amenable to that?
Well, I think the plan as proposed leaves all of Suntree as you had stated last time.
Right,
Yeah, Suntree, Baytree, all part of District 4.
right.
The only little strip was that strip from US 1 east to the river. It's a small strip that continues where District 2 ends right now in Rockledge and continues it all the way down to Pineda, does not pass Pineda. It's just a small strip, and that was to make the population just about 0.5, so it's right in the, easily within the variance. That was the proposal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further discussion? Mr. Fisher?
I think everything starts in District 1, Mr. Chairman.
It's a supporting officer. It's a-
You know?
You got to move south.
And so I
You don't have
think
a choice.
I think the real question is whether or not Is District 1, are we going to break up Merritt Island, North Merritt Island? Because that seems to be the big factors, whether you carry this map all the way across and take the northern part of Merritt Island, to me seems like one of the issues that we as a board got to decide. I know you have probably a little concern for Merritt Island. I know some Merritt Island residents have. And so, to me, I think once that's established, wherever this board decides to go there, then the rest of it kind of starts falling in line, with lines. If District 1 doesn't go all the way across and take northern Merritt Island, then we probably that ought to be decided, I think. And I think the rest of the maps can kind of start falling.
Yeah. Well, I think, Mr. Fisher, I think it was pretty clearly stated by, 4 or 5 people from Merritt Island last week what their wishes were. And I'm saying they're speaking for the group because they represent homeowner association and are plugged in there. So I would assume that they're speaking from that position of keeping Merritt Island in District 2 and not moving it. So to your point, then it moves down on the mainland, and it's where you break it up there is the question. And the irony of this is when you look at 4 or 5 different maps of just moving it down on the mainland, everybody kind of used the same general lines to work from. So I mean, granted, those can be moved here and there and changed a little bit, but obviously what we've got to be cognizant of is precincts and different things like that, and obviously communities of interest and making sure we're keeping a lot of that together. And I think that was contemplated in everybody's decisions as they did it, because I did one too, and it pretty much falls in line with Mr. Weiler's without even looking at his. So I think from the standpoint of North Merritt Island, I think that people spoke last week and want to see that stay as it is and move south on the mainland for District 1.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Hodges?
Going on to what Mr. Krivo was saying about Mr. Weiler's.
It doesn't work.
Sorry, I don't have a loud voice. I think Mr. Weiler's proposal is there's not going to be a perfect map. And in anything you do in life, you have to compromise. So I think with a combination with Vieira, there's like 30,000 people in Vieira, about. And then we heard from Mr. Foley last week, there's about 5,000 people in the Century HOA. This week, I heard from Satellite Beach. I went to high school there, and I'm very familiar with that. I think it's a good idea to keep Satellite Beach and Indian Harbor Beach together in District 4. And so you're trying to make Vieira happy, Century happy, Baytree happy, North Merritt Island, Satellite Beach. I think I saw some representatives here. So you're trying to make everybody happy. Again, it's not perfect, but it's, we heard from people in these homeowners associations. I think there's 9,000 people in North Merritt Island, HOA, and then, you have Vieira and Century, so.
Mr. Weiler?
One of the reasons that I kept North Merritt Island in the plan is because I looked at the whole map and looked at, well, where is development going to occur probably over the next 10 years? Everybody knows that Vieira and District 4, that development is moving west and will probably grow significantly. Well, for District 2, we're surrounded, and the only growth area left for us is North Merritt Island. There is growth there, development to be done. And then when I looked at District 1, I'm saying, well, wait a minute. You have a lot of territory to move north for development. And with all the new jobs coming in, supposedly, with these new companies coming in for the Space Center, those people are going to be looking to be closer to the Space Center. So I can see areas north of Titusville developing quite a bit. So you'll make up that over the next 10 years. I see District 1 probably won't have a population problem. District 4 definitely won't have a population problem. They may even go over again. But, and we may be okay in District 2 because of having North Merritt Island for development. So it all sort of, in my mind, just looking at the whole big picture of the county from just a development population over the next 10 years, that one sort of makes sense. And I would also imagine, just looking to minorities and so forth, one of the big things with the companies that are moving in the Space Center, and I have people moving in my neighborhood on Merritt Island, it's a diverse community moving in. A lot of people are coming in from Colorado, California, Texas, and so there is it's not all of one racial makeup. It is a diverse racial makeup. I think we'll all be in relatively decent shape there over the next 10 years. That's my crystal ball for the future. Thank you.
Mr. Gallo?
I believe we have only really 4 maps that are viable to move forward if we wanted to look at the general strokes of maps going forward. We have the Jordan-Minibu plan, which would break up Merritt Island and cross 95 as the difference from Weiler. We have the Tuppercreva-Weiler plan, which is identical in, I believe, every respect, looking through the data. We have the Plan B by Mr. Percriva, which I believe you're setting aside for the Weiler plan. Then we have the Yvonne minus Tobiah plan as kind of the third plan. My understanding is that for purposes of today, our goal was to narrow it down to kind of 3 maps, and there are kind of those 3 maps here of the viable ones to move forward.
Well, those are, certainly the guardrails that are out there, and to your point, yeah, I mean, when you look at them all, they start kind of looking the same with a few minor changes here and there, and I think Mr. Pacria put up, Mr. Weiler's map just instead of his own because, it makes sense. So we do have a first and a second on Mr. Weiler's map to move it forward, and we're in discussion, and we'll take a vote on whether we want to do that. But any other questions or comments on Mr. Weiler's map as we?
The one, Mr. Gallo, you eliminated yours. Is it in part because, or in full because it is subsumed by what Mr. Weiler has proposed, or abandoning some of the thoughts and ideas you had originally?
As I said, on the island map and on the Cape Canaveral map, I think there were important discussions to have there of did we want to go that direction based on public feedback. I heard from Mr. Fisher and from representatives of District 1 that they considered their tourism business to be their beachside community that they wanted to maintain. And so I think that was important for discussion, as well as the beachside community being isolated. I don't think is wise from a MSTU perspective, from a population perspective, from a representation perspective. I don't think anyone fully supported that at this committee. And then the other one was to reflect kind of the thoughts and ideas in the Percriva-Weiler plan or the Jordan-Minibu plan, which are better stated in their plans.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Further comments? Questions?
I think I agree with Joshua. I think he made sense grouping them 3 together. I am really open. I want everybody to be happy, but that's not going to happen for sure. But we've heard from Merritt Island, heard from Satellite Beach for sure. Certainly heard from, I can't say Todd. And I think it's a foregone conclusion that we certainly want to make sure that the Viera area stays intact for sure. We, of course, have heard that I've heard, can't speak for others, but I think others have heard that there is some who's going back and forth for the Satellite Beach area. I've heard that. So that's kind of up in the air. The Merritt Island thing, North Merritt Island thing, I'm pretty strong with where I am as far as lines. I was only doing lines, just going across using roads. And it just so happened that North Merritt Island had some area, but I'm pretty pliable. I just want us to do the best job we possibly can. So if there is some compromise to be made, then I'm really ready to do that for sure.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm on the same train that Mr. George does.
I think he loves me.
So I'm going to jump with him.
I don't know what I did to him, but I sure love him. I tell you.
So you don't have to call the Minibu plan.
All right. Further comments? Yes, sir. Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Chairman, from a North Brevard standpoint, and I think Merritt Island would fall in this role. We've got several big, large developers, and Mr. Jordan would know better than I, that are developing and currently breaking ground. One of them's a 2,200 unit subdivision, the other one's a 1,200 unit subdivision, and that's not even talking about Mims or Scottsmore. So I haven't drawn a map because I'm still under the proposal there's a fourth plan, and that's do nothing. And I'm serious about that because I don't believe there's enough in. I think South Brevard is going to grow. Everybody wants to be Todd, but he moves at a faster pace than the rest of us. And I don't, from my standpoint, me being 5,000 to 7,000 people behind, in total population, doesn't bother me. And I think that over the next 10 years, North Brevard is positioning itself to have some growth, that these numbers will be closer, And so I don't know if we just got to move it, but if it's based on the population thing, the percentages aren't great enough to make me worry about it.
Okay.
So that would be the fourth option.
Well, and listen, that could be the second option.
Yeah.
When we get done with this one and we make a vote on it, there's an open discussion to be had on what this committee wants to do. So I would tell you, I think when we do that, we should make sure the committee, since it's not a map that's on paper for everybody to see at the moment, obviously we know what it looks like and it's been compared, but we need to see the deviation so everybody knows, what we're voting on. But to your point, I'd love to tell you that North Merritt Island may contribute to some of that in District 2, but, because that's where the growth opportunities are for District 2 as well as maybe the mainland to some degree. But, I think District 1 does have a lot of potential for growth, and obviously we know what District 4 is doing. You're always the guy that we point to, but from there, South Brevard has opportunities as well, and I think we're just going to continue to see growth and across the board in these districts. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jordan, yes.
I just need clarity because Mr. Fisher brought us. Robin's a pretty smart guy, but he's not as smart as me. So I just need to. No, I know. Ask my wife. I can tell you something. I just need to understand the percentage because he did bring up a good point about not doing anything. But I thought there was a requirement.
Let's finish. Because we're on Mr. Weiler's map first.
Right.
So let's do that, and then if he brings that up as a motion and it's second, and we're going to have a discussion. Let's have that discussion. But there's no reason to have that discussion on Mr. Weiler's map, is there?
I just need the clarification.
We will get that clarification when we come to that. No, I didn't tell you. No. I want us to finish the discussion on Mr. Weiler's map, and once we're finished with that, we will absolutely have a discussion, and you can second his motion if you like.
I don't plan to do that.
Okay.
So with Mr. Weiler, explain to me Merritt Island is out of District 1 on your map.
Now, just say the last piece of it again.
Merritt Island, North Merritt Island is on District 1 or off of District 1 on your map?
It is off of, it's, on my map, it's still part of District 2. It does not change.
Okay, thank you.
All he did on his map is move south on the mainland.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just for a point of clarification from the King of Viera,
Wow.
I had to get one in too tight. Everybody else should. And it's true. It's true. It's a proud thing to be. But so the vote, Mr. Chairman, or your motion for Mr. Perkriwa is actually that would be one of the ones on our list. By going to the others thereafter, you may end up with another motion that we have 2 or 3 or whatever. But Mr. Perkriwa is to make it a choice, not the choice that we work from
My
going
motion
forward.
was to make it the base map that we work from.
So that would be the choice.
No.
So,
But then I was trying to understand from what the chairman said to Mr. Jordan,
no,
how we would.
it's a map to work from if we choose to work from that map. We have an option, correct me if I'm wrong, with your motion, we have an option to move another map forward to have a discussion about and work from.
Okay,
Yes.
that's fine with me.
Yeah. Okay. Any further questions, comments? Ms. Minus, did you have something?
No.
No? Okay. All in favor of Mr. Kriva's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? All right, so unanimous vote to move that Mr. Weiler's map forward as a map for us to look seriously at. Obviously, there could be, changes brought forward on that. Further discussion, other options. Mr. Fisher?
I'll make a motion that we use current district boundaries as a basis.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Mr. Weiler, second. Okay. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever, and I think it's probably cost-wise in the best interest of this county.
Mr. Chair, going back to Abby, if we did stay with the current status quo, would there be any challenges legality-wise if we did that?
There is, using the percentage deviation, so looking at the numbers that we were looking at, there is a concern. You do have two districts that are getting, when you add them together, getting close to that 10% deviation, so.
Abby, can you speak up?
I'm
The mics are over.
I know.
Yeah,
So-
Abby, can you come up?
Everyone has
And
to
I'm-
yell.
So just looking at the, and I don't have that data, but those are the deviations. Oh, you actually have them calculated, so I think he has them on the screen.
Can't read it.
Yes, these deviations here, and when you start to look at them, the concern is that we may be triggering that 10% that you're not supposed to go over. When you start looking at two districts, you have the potential to go over that deviation.
Excuse me, how do you get to that 10%? I'm looking at that 4.7, 5.72.
So the way they,
On the right there, the next column, those are the deviations, I think.
and it is, and the way they do the deviation is plus or minus. So it's how they calculate I guess the software does the calculations.
Abby, it's District 4 and District 2 gets you a little over 10.
Yes, so, okay, District 4 and District 2 show, yes, the deviation over 10.
I think
I might get to 10, I'm confused.
So we're looking at the high, yes, I think that's what we're doing, the highest and the lowest population. So you have the highest being, well, actually,
I think you got a 127.
you got 127 being District 4, so I don't see the district. Were you saying District 2 and District? Can't see anything.
Yeah. I'm trusting everything y'all are saying.
Yeah. I've learned never to do math in public. Committee, what you have is with the existing districts, right there next to the arrow, the population for District 4 is 5,700 and change over the target of 322, so that gives you a deviation of plus 4.7. And then District 2 is 6,900 under the target of 121, 322, and that gives you a deviation of minus 5.7. I know you don't add a plus and a minus, get over 10, but you're looking at the spread.
the spread.
So the spread is 10.
It's the
Yeah.
spread. It's not the actual deviation above or below.
Yeah,
It's
so
the
we
deviation
didn't
between
define
the
it. It's the
highest
spread.
and lowest.
Yeah, but I think the thing was that there wasn't one district more than 10% higher than the other district. And I don't think you have that scenario in any of those.
No, we don't, yeah. No, the most, they're all, except for
And I think
District
that was
5, they're all
intentional
4 or
rule.
5%, yeah.
And I think that was the intention of the rule, that you didn't have more than 10% spread from one district to another. I don't think you have that in these numbers.
No, you're correct. They're all 4 to 5 except for District 5. 4 to 5.
Ms. Schmidt?
And I think I did make a comment at one of our meetings that when this was done before, the committee decided to go with 5%. This committee talked about 3% in the beginning, but you certainly have the ability legally to go up to 10% if you want to. And there's also nothing stopping the county commission in 5 years from saying, we'd like to have a look and a redistricting look at it if things get out of whack with our friend here.
mean
And I'm not
King
complaining,
Tide?
trust me. But,
And just for the record, I think the 3% came from an association of counties thing. I don't know that it was something that, yeah,
legally, I
yeah.
think we can go up to 10%, and obviously what you're saying, Robin, those are, if we just left it the way it is still is within the legal boundaries of percentages, so.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Jordan?
Okay, that was actually the discussion I wanted to have when he made he talked about it, because I thought we had an understanding of how far we could go, and there was a overpopulation in some areas and an underpopulation in other areas. But now I'm hearing that that's not really true, right?
What do you mean as far as?
Well,
The
we were trying to
percentages?
balance the districts, right? But if we leave things the way they are, they won't be balanced, because there's going to be population that's going to be under, and there's going to be some that's going to be over the 121 that we were looking at. So I'm just trying to understand what the rules are.
Typically, yes, you're supposed to balance out the population, but there is a deviation that you're allowed to have up to
Right.
10%. You're usually looking for 3 or a 5%, no more than 10. So there is no hard and fast rule as to this is, you have to balance them out to, perfect numbers, they're all equal, but you are trying to balance it out because you're supposed to have one person, one vote, and that's recognized that if you have one district that's a very, very high population, then, you just don't have the representation that you're supposed to achieve. You're supposed to have the 5 districts, and as best as possible, even them out. And there's a recognition that it's not always perfect. Like, there are man-made boundaries or city boundaries or something that may be an impediment, and so one district has a little bit of higher population than the other. So there is a flexibility there, but it's really the case law and the courts that are looking for that 3% or the 5% and not exceeding the 10. In all honesty, my understanding is when it hits that 10% or above, that's when the courts start to really look at whether you have we done something unusual or really trying to, at that point, cause an adverse impact to one district over another? Is there a favoritism for one district versus another?
So if I understand correctly, since we're not even close to 10% on any of these, you are doing a cumulative of 2 districts to get to the almost 10%, correct?
Right. We were looking at what we were calling, I think, the spread at that point.
So, but the law, the rules is to have only, or a maximum of 10% in one.
It's the spread, yes. So that's what,
The spread is for district by district, not 2 districts like you were trying to do.
it's between the 2 districts. So I think, thank you, being shown what we had provided previously, but it describes how you do this deviation, and that it's a percentage deviation from the mean, and it is between the different, you do use the districts together. It's not just one district.
So we can't stay the same, is what you were saying.
Essentially, because at that point, we'd be triggering that 10%. I don't have the numbers right in front of me again, but I believe if we had, if we're looking at, what districts were they?
2 and 4, so you're
2
looking
and-
at 10.5.
You're looking at 10.5. So at that point in time, I mean, you could technically leave them alone, but at that point, if there was a challenge, the courts would look at that with a little bit more of an eye, because you're hitting that 10% mark, and they're questioning why there wasn't a redistribution of the population to even out the districts a little bit more.
Okay.
But I mean, it isn't a hard and fast rule. There is no real hard and fast rule. It's a percentage, what's recommended, and what really catches the court's eye if there is a challenge.
Okay. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Mr. Gatto.
I was just going to point out to the committee that the deviation was 10.46, which is on the high end, and theoretically, if Mr. Fisher just wanted to make modifications along the D2, D4 line, you could theoretically do it, but I think that would draw stricter scrutiny because you didn't go through the entire map to make changes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my math is different than everybody else's.
Well, you did go to Florida.
You went to
so-
Florida, yeah.
That was a math major.
Yeah.
But the number is 121 that everybody's trying to get to, right? So isn't that the number we're trying to?
Yes, but
So-
I believe what she's saying is it's based off the spread. It's based off the spread, not the difference between one district and the 121 number, but it's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the difference between two districts, the high and the low. And we tripped that threshold on whatever district it is, you know, at 10.46.
I guess my thought process, rather, if it stays the same in representation and power, if that's what the courts are looking at, I got one vote and that Todd's got one vote. And so at the end of the day, you know, you got to count the three. And so I mean, my vote is just as powerful as someone who's got a more population than that.
Well, and at the end of the day, there's still only 5 commissioners, and they each have one vote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're-
So I'm not sure the misrepresentation gets. He's got 6,000-7,000 more people than me. Okay, he's still got one vote. I got one vote. I mean, you got one vote. So I'm not sure it's that much of a issue in the power struggle. Abby, I'm sorry, I'm going.
Well, no, I just would, if I may.
She's pulled out the charter book. So let's listen to this first. Yeah.
So I'll go over here. I mean, I also, Jim can explain that, I think, a little bit better about the spread, but as far as our charter, it does direct us that the Board of County Commissioners shall cause the county to be divided into county commission districts of contiguous territory as nearly equal in population as practicable. So we're supposed to try to even out that population. That's why this committee was, you know, conceived, and that to assist the board in doing that. So it's just that determination. I mean, have we actually divided the 5 districts into population nearly equal in population as practicable? And that is really from our charter, but.
So everybody's answered this question. Do you think we're going to get sued if we don't do anything?
So we can always get sued, and we can always defend a lawsuit. It's going to be the courts that actually look at what the determination by the Board of County Commissioners. Ultimately, they're the ones who decide what happens in the redistricting. If we take no action at that point, you know, if someone contests that, you know, that's something that could happen. But I mean, once again, it's not a hard and fast rule. The 10% is really just kind of. It triggers the court's attention if for some reason there's that deviation. So.
My motion stands.
Mr. Steele.
I couldn't agree with Commissioner Fisher more. Who is going to sue us? I mean, really, I mean, this is a small amount.
Don't say that.
Let's just think logically. I know it's difficult for people in public office to think logically. If we kept the lines exactly where they were, we alleviate the headache of the Supervisor of Elections Office. We alleviate the millions of dollars of expenses that we're talking about in order to redistrict this stuff. And we don't, in my opinion, these deviations are so small that the likelihood of having somebody come after us is minimal. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
You running for something?
My life.
Your life?
Yeah, I'm running from a Von minus right tonight, thanks.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Weiler? Yeah.
Back to the math again. So we have 121,332 as our target. So 10% of that's 12,132. And the spread between the lowest and the highest is 12,699 population. So Mr. Gatto was correct. It's right at 10.4%. We're outside that 10% in that gap. And that's liable to cause somebody to question it because it's over that magical 10%, even though it's 0.4. Although I have to agree with Mr. Steele. I think we'd save everybody a lot of time and trouble, and I agree with you if we just kept it like it is. That's why I seconded the motion. But just discussion.
Yeah. Do you have a comment?
Yeah. Even though Mr. Fisher sounds logical, I think one of the challenges we have, yes, he loves me. One of the challenges we do have is we have a edict that says, let's look at this thing, let's try to balance it out as much as possible. And for the committee to say, we're not going to do anything, we're not worried about suing or anything like, but we're not going to do anything because we think that the population is going to take care of itself in 5 years. And I don't think that's what we're supposed to be doing here. We're supposed to be proactive, try to balance it out as much as possible, and come up with something. And by the way, whatever we come up with, the commissioners don't have to agree to it. That's true. Right? So I think we should try to do the best job we possibly can with what the information that we have. We do have 10.46% or whatever. I don't agree with you. People love to sue all the time, but it is not my fear of that. And yes, we could save a lot of money, but in the long run, we could find ourselves, or someone else could be around this table doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing right now. And I certainly don't want that to happen, for sure.
Further comments?
If I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I want to go back to what Abby was saying about what is in our charter, and I'm going to beat this again, that in our charter says we must preserve the several municipalities and geographically cohesive racial or ethnic minority communities from fragmentation. That is in our charter. We chose that. That is in our charter, so I hope that we're not choosing part and not recognizing the other. It's very unpopular, I understand that. And if it doesn't gain any ground, it is what it is. But it needs to be recognized that this is also part of our charter.
So are you saying that the current maps don't satisfy that? The current way that it's drawn right now as we exist today?
I don't see that. That's why I'm beating this drum. Okay. But if it doesn't work, then whatever is the next best, or whatever the majority, then I am in support of what it is. But my point is that this is in our charter. She just quoted another part of our charter, but we don't want to recognize this part of the charter. That's an issue for me.
Ms. Hodgers?
Going on about to compare and to contrast Mr. Fisher's proposal and Ms. Minus's proposal. I'm not sure if you can answer this in a yes or no. But if you're in a court of law and you're the judge and you had Ms. Minus's proposal versus Mr. Fisher, who's less likely to be sued? I mean, you can sue anybody.
I don't know. Poor Abby.
Abby's sustained.
So I'll answer it like a true attorney. It really depends on what the lawsuit is challenging, how they challenge it. If for some, at this point, it just depends if the court sees the majority-minority district as something that, is not just subordinating the traditional redistricting tools just to race. I mean, at that point, if we can show that there was other considerations that were given, in addition to the race in order to create that district, I mean, that's something we would bring forward in a case. As far as the 10%, at that point, it would be an evaluation by the court. So it's kind of hard to say which one would, if we had the choice of which case to go on, which one, at that point, I would hope we would never have to be in a contest over our redistricting. But I mean, obviously anyone can raise a lawsuit and raise an issue. It's really an evaluation by the court. And I can tell you that looking at all the cases I've looked at on these issues, the courts are very different the way they evaluate it. I mean, there are key core issues, but in some cases they found it in favor of the majority minority, and some they did not. And it is very dependent on who your judge will be and what the issues are as presented by the defendant and by the plaintiff. So it's hard for me to say. I wish I could, but that's a hard question.
They could sue us on the way we number them. Exactly. Bottom line. Ms. Schmidt?
I would ask that we vote on Mr. Perkruwa's motion, and then if anyone else...
We have a motion on the floor right now of Mr. Fisher's motion of the existing. We already voted on his.
Okay.
So we have Mr. Fisher's motion to keep things as they are. Mr. Weiler seconded it. So we're in discussion on that. And as soon as we're done with discussion, we'll take a vote. Yes, Mr. Moore.
Mr. Fisher's point, I don't agree with the map exactly how it is. I do agree with his thought process that current line should be a strong consideration in the thought process. And so to the degree that it's another map that's a part of the consideration, I do think the current lines are worthy of ending up at the table as a part of the discussion. Although I may or may not agree with Ms. Minus's proposal in total, I think the the impact on demographics, it should be part of this discussion that goes, regardless of if we use Mr. Weiler's map or whatever. So, I would support Mr. Fisher's proposition because I think the current map should be on the table as a part of this discussion. Now to Mr. Jordan's point, I think what Mr. Pakriwa brought up, the growth is going to push us so far and so quickly beyond that 10.46 because the spread is between 2 and 4. And so if it's 10.46 today, Todd's success is going to make it 11, 12, 13, 14. It's going to continue to grow and that divide's going to get a lot bigger. But would like to see the current map on the table for the discussion.
You can increase density on North Merritt Island and probably balance all that out.
Yeah. Let's see how that works out for you.
Yeah. Yes, Mr.
So, as I'm understanding it from all this discussion, is that the issue with Mr. Fisher's proposal is the spread as it relates to districts 2 and 4, correct? That's really the issue with his proposal, not any of the other districts necessarily. So
I think that's the consistent issue from the standpoint of this committee and the conversation we're having. I mean, that's the one thing that comes up as, and it's not, I think somebody said down the road, it's today. I mean, it's as we vote on it with the census numbers as it is. I mean, the courts aren't going to look at the possibilities because, you could have a gopher turtle out there that shuts you down tomorrow,
Yeah.
I mean, you get it? He knows. You get where we're going with that? So, the fact of the matter is, it's like, we got to base it all off of today. And the spread is going to get greater, but the spread got greater from when they passed the last map to where we are today. So I think, this is purely based on where we sit today with the data as it is in front of us.
So, Mr. Chairman, understanding that is a solution where we're not making many changes and we're staying true to the existing boundaries, but recognizing that spread needs to be reduced. Do we look at Mr. Weiler's plan change areas regarding District 4 and District 2, moving population from District 4 to District 2 in those same areas already identified, and then in all other respects stay true to the current district boundaries? Then that spread is addressed. If you look at Mr. Weiler's proposal, there are plan change areas, plan change area number 6, D4 to D2, that's almost 6,700 in population. Plan change area 7 is another 1,418 in population, and plan change area 8 is almost 6,500. And you want, ideally, because of the anticipated and projected growth in D4, you want to underpopulate District 4. So is that perhaps a method of marrying the two concepts, not making many changes at all to the district boundaries except for reducing that spread and using Mr. Weiler's proposed change areas as they relate to District 4 and District 2?
I mean, I would say that would be, obviously that can be a proposal that we bring forward. If Mr. Fisher wants to continue on with what he's put on the table, certainly we take a vote on it, and you could propose that as the compromise of all compromises, and get, to your point with the math, get to exactly where we're trying to get. So yes, I would say that Mr. Fisher, is the one that the question is pointed to. So, does that help?
Well, I think I think it is
a third option. Yeah.
I think mine stay the same.
Yeah. And to your point, that is a third option, because that's why I was saying it may take marrying some of these maps together, and whether it's the existing map with 3 proposed changes of Mr. Weiler's map laid on top of it, you get to where you're trying to get. That's a decision this committee has to make.
Mr. Chairman, would you consider taking public comment before we took this vote? I think that we really kind of are at a point where maybe we ought to hear from the public.
Well, we would take public comment before we do a final take a vote on a final map. Right now, we're putting proposals forward.
Okay.
And we've taken
it.
public comment at every.
Oh, yeah, I know,
so,
I understand.
yeah,
We've been
so we're-
completely open, I get it.
Yeah, so,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
is there the possibility that we could take a final vote on a final map before the end of this meeting?
That would be wonderful.
Is that a proposal?
That's a proposal.
Yeah. No, listen, I mean, that's, that would be great if we can get there, certainly. So, further comments or questions on Mr. Fisher's proposal to keep things as they are today?
Okay, I just want to make sure we understand, his proposal is just like Todd's proposal. We're going to use those as a basis for doing some modifications and all that stuff, so you have to be open.
It's just
enough to
another
hear-
option.
Just another option.
Yes. Yes.
I'm good with that.
Yes.
Call for the question.
All right. What's that?
I said I could be amenable
Yeah. All right. All in favor of Mr. Fisher's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, show it unanimous. All right. Further conversations?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Certainly want to bring mine forward because of the fact that I was just going across lines, but I'm certainly amenable to doing some modification. I think I only had a problem. I understand the North Merritt Island thing, and that's the reason why I asked that question, because I heard loud and clear from North Merritt Island they want to stay in their district, and I have no problem with that. Have no problem with Todd's either, but I think on one of the maps it was we didn't have a straight line for Rockledge, and that was the only concern that I had. If we had a straight line, because it seemed like it kind of bumped up, if I remember right. So, John, yours, don't you bump up Rockledge? You kind of break up Rockledge some? You don't go across.
You want me to respond to that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Let me get the maps here. We did have a straight line across where the Vieira DRI was. We made that, and that gave us by population that was in Rockledge that was currently in District 4. So we took over, I don't have the precinct numbers. Oh, yeah, we do. We have them down there. Looks like we took over 428 and miscellaneous 433 and so forth. So most of Rockledge as a city then becomes District 2. Right now, it's pretty split between District 4 and District 2. That's in the Vieira area going from 95 almost over to US 1. It leaves the DRI in place. And then if you go to, I think it was the second District 2 and 4 to District 1, we're giving a little bit of District 4 and a little bit of District 2 to District 1 to allow them to come over 95, and some of that is into Rockledge over in the Timber West area. But we needed that to give population to District 1 so that we even out that population. And it's a contiguous area. It comes over 95, but that's about the only thing I could say about that. I was looking a moment ago back at the percentages, and the more I look at it, the more I like what I did, because if you look at if you look at the percentages over here for all the districts, the target deviation, I mean, we're at no more than 2% on the spread between the lowest and the highest district. I mean, that's pretty doggone close. And the lowest is 0.43 and the highest is 151, and that's District 1. So it's, the spread is, and it just worked out that way. I didn't deliberately decide those numbers, but when he put them in, that's where the deviation came in. Worked out pretty good.
You've proven that you're brilliant.
No, it wasn't me. He did it.
What I'm going to suggest is, because I think we are inclusive of the things that I was concerned with, so I would ask that we eliminate my map, just so we can reduce some of the paperwork we have here, and we can certainly negotiate after that.
Sure.
Great. Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I just want to make a motion that there be an option incorporating the suggestion that I made relative to Mr. Fisher's proposal retaining the current district boundaries and incorporating one or more of the plan change areas 6, 7, and/or 8 from D4 to D2 from Mr. Weiler's proposal in order to reduce that spread between District 2 and District 4.
Does everybody?
I'm not so sure I understand.
No, I don't understand.
I don't understand. Say it again.
In terms of beach, not beach.
Yep.
Where's that, where are you going with that?
So it's plan change area 6 in Mr.
Wait,
Weiler's.
Mr. Steele, if you would pull out Mr. Weiler's document, and you'll see on the front page of that, it'll show PCA 6, 7, and 8.
Got it.
And that's what he is referencing.
Yep. So,
Okay.
so
Okay.
6 would move the,
No, it's very self-explanatory
Okay.
here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
okay.
Okay. Mr. Gatto?
To clarify, just based on the comments that we've had from the public, I might suggest that we make the motion 6 and 7 as the ones that we focus on, leaving the island alone based on the comments we've received from the public for solidifying the motion instead of having an or, making it just 6 and 7.
Yeah, we would need definite clarity, I think.
Yeah,
just
I'll-
teeing it up. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll amend my motion that it just include plan change area 6 and plan change area 7 from Mr. Weiler's proposal.
Second.
Say it again. Include or exclude?
Including
Yes.
change area 6 and 7.
So the motion is to use the existing map as it sits, taking Mr. Weiler's PCA 6 and PCA 7 and incorporating it into the existing map as it sits today.
We just have to spread it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you include PCA 8?
No, that's
No.
what I just ended up excluding.
Basically, that's South
Okay.
Patrick Shores.
It
Is that
is,
what you're talking
correct.
about?
Yeah.
So you're talking about not including any of that beachside as it exists right now?
Exclude.
That's what I was suggesting for this proposal.
So then where would District 2 pick up the population?
District 2 would be picking up the 6,698 in plan change area 6 and the 1,418 in plan change area 7.
From your map.
Yeah. And I don't know if James is able to tell us what
The six-
that results in
The
terms of.
6,400.
So that would be
is,
leaving-
the unincorporated area north of Satellite Beach.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, well, that's what I was asking.
I
Yeah.
wasn't including that
right.
in this proposal.
It stays as it is
Stays as
today.
it is.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
So, right.
I just
Correct.
want that clear on the record. Yeah.
So we have a motion on the table,
Second.
and we have it seconded by Mr. Gatto. So
Second.
we got
Got a lot of seconds.
Mr. Weiler.
Discussion.
Yes, discussion we are in.
So, if I understood, after we leave that like it is, you would have to go to where we were in Cocoa and just leave that with no changes there. Is that?
Right, that's what I'm proposing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The
Between
existing,
District 1 and District 2, where it is over in the Cocoa area, you leave it like it
it
is.
stays the same.
I got it, okay.
The only thing changing is your PCA 6 and PCA 7 in this motion.
Okay. And those would be added to District 2.
Yes, from 4 to 2.
And PCA 8 would be excluded. Got it.
James, are you able to
Yeah,
share with them?
so that would, basically you would be adding 8,000 people to District 2, which would put us at 122,000 thereabouts for District 2, and then that would drop District 4 to around 119,000, give or take.
That ain't bad.
That's
We can live with that.
And I'm the underdog as usual.
Ain't over yet, buddy.
further discussion or comments on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go back to Todd's original thing with Mr. Weiler. If we're going to open it up, I don't want to limit myself in this vote today without looking at the other, 6 PCAs plus whatever else that we intended to come back with in terms of that. So not that I disagree with those two, but limiting it to those two today, I'm not in favor of doing that quite yet.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. Mr. Moore, as long as we can vote on a final map before the end of this meeting.
I'm still not there on that one yet.
Wow.
That'll be a majority vote.
I've only got one, so you can still get there.
We're back to that, right? Further comments on this proposal, Mr. Cavill?
Question for James.
Yes.
What is the total variance on this new proposal from Mr. Retrieva?
It was
Saving James.
small.
Go ahead.
I can't tell you District 2, but District 4's variance would be minus 1.9%.
But for the highest.
The spread.
The highest spread of, I just can't read the,
So your spread is 1.9 and, oh, I got it right here. Your spread, District 1 would be 4.7 under the target. There you go, thank you. And then your District 2. So your spread is going to be 6.7-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. Please forgive me, it's public math. That's somewhere.
Public math.
Yeah.
Now.
thank you.
Further,
Actually, it would be around 8 because you'd still have District 1 and District 3 would be negative 4.7, and then District 3 would be
okay,
4.
because they haven't changed.
Yeah,
So
because they haven't changed.
now you
so-
go to 1 and 3 and use that spread. It's under 10, it's at 8 or so, yeah.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Further comments? Questions? All in favor of the current proposal signify by saying yay. Yay. Opposed?
I'm the one name, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Moore is the one nay. All right. Further discussions, ideas to bring forward to the committee for further discussion. Otherwise, we take the slate and move forward.
Chairman, I move we take the slate and move forward.
Got a motion?
Okay, I'll second.
Got a second?
Yep.
For discussion,
Discussion?
is that to be the Flowers plan, my plan?
And the hybrid. Yep.
Okay. I'm good with that.
I'm sure you are.
Question? Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying yay. Yay. Opposed, nay. Unanimous vote to bring those 3 maps forward. So
All right.
let's start with Mr. Fisher's map, because I think there's no further discussion to have if that's the map we're going to go with. Otherwise, we have maps that have been changed. So from the standpoint of this committee, what's the, obviously, the biggest issue that we all have is the spread. That is number one conversation that keeps being brought up on that map. I guess the question is, are we willing as a committee to stand behind that? Or should I say, is Abby willing to stand up in court and defend that? And are y'all all prepared to be deposed for that?
No.
And say that she didn't warn us? No, she did warn us. So that's, I think that's the discussion that this committee has to have is that what we want to, go with? Or do we want to, make the changes that we feel we need to make? I think we have, obviously, a hybrid of all 3 of these maps has been brought forward. You've brought the existing map, he's brought a new map, and you took pieces of his map and put it on your map. So, so I think that's what this process is about, is narrowing it down, and I think we've done that in a way that's made it to where we're using parts and pieces of the overall discussion. It's just a matter of how we want to marry it all up.
Mr. Chairman.
So, yes, sir.
All right. My thoughts is, I like all 3 of them, in some way or the other, Mr. Fisher. Since you're driving me, I better say that. I want to ride back home. I don't hitchhike. Anyway, but I guess the only concern I have, because I think Mr. Fisher, along with what Todd said, to me, it makes a lot of sense. What my concern is how the public sees what we would, if we vote for this, what they would believe about this commission. Did we actually work hard to balance everything, or did we take the easy way out? I don't know what the answer is.
I would show them this.
Yeah, you got, what'd you say, 8%? We're at 8%. We're not at 10, we're at 8%. And there could be some who say, well, you know, you should have made sure that the population was more balanced, which we have the power to do, but we may not do that. That is really my only concern. I just think that we've got something pretty close to being as good as we're going to get it. It's just a question of what, as you've asked, can we be deposed? And we feel very comfortable that what we have done was the right thing to do. And I don't know what the answer is to that, to be honest with you.
Mr. Fisher?
I'm quite sure the voter that gets pulled from 4 to 2 or 2 to 4 will say they put me in another district, you know, and so that's just, I mean, it's just the way it is. I don't know if tonight's the night that we vote on a map. I thought maybe the way that was going to go, Mr. Chairman, is we've narrowed down to 2 or 3, and then we'll have the public comments, and then next time we come back together, we vote. Is that how you're
Well, we
looking
can
at
have
it? Or
public comment tonight before we were to go to a vote on anything, and if this committee sees that it's a, you know, they've got a clear picture of what they want to do, we can vote tonight. I mean, there's no, you know, necessity to come back here and take 2 weeks to decide what we've probably all kind of started making up in our own minds. But, you know, if we're going to have a discussion on these 3 maps, I mean, we can halt the discussion now and have public comment just to add that into, you know, further discussion. If we can come to an agreement tonight, we can come to an agreement tonight. And
I just want to make sure we got the public in it before we do anything.
Mr. Wiley?
I move we go to public comment. On your suggestion.
Yeah. All right. Discussion on that? Go ahead and go to public comment. Okay. All right. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. All right. At this time, we'll go to public comment. All right. All right. So first up, is it Mike Best?
Easy?
Yeah, oh, okay, yeah, it looked like a T, I'm sorry. Yes, you're up. Yes, sir.
Just stay right here.
Oh, come on up here. Yes, sir.
I've never been in
Yeah, just speak so we can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to thank everybody for everything you're going through on this. I'm part of Century Master HOA. We would love to see it stay as a District 4 for logistics part of it. Like you said, if it ain't broke, don't need to fix anything right there if it's not broke. So we oppose of it, any part of 4 being moved away from the Century area being that way.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next we have Mindy Gibson. You recognize?
I'm a little tall.
It doesn't work.
Sit in my chair.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Just speak out loud.
All right, so it doesn't matter right now. I'm with Satellite Beach. I am a councilwoman for the city of Satellite Beach. I know several of you up here, and some of you I don't know. I'm here to say that Satellite Beach as a city specifically wants to stay in District 4. I do know that there's the talks of moving South Patrick Shores into District 2, and I'd like you guys to consider what the process of how you're supposed to do these districts to begin with, is using the geographic. We have Patrick Air Force Base is a big void. You have the lagoon, right? We have the main canal that we share with South Patrick Shores along with Indian Harbor Beach. We have the mid-reach beach projects that we have to do when we do beach renourishments. So we do a lot of projects congruently with each other. And so from a city perspective, I know Courtney's probably going to actually come up and say that, so I'm going to stop from there. I'll let her say whatever she wants to say. I am very happy with anything that keeps Satellite Beach in District 4. I know that my community will be very happy of it. I do think that South Patrick Shores should also stay with us, just for to keep things simple when you're doing budgets and projects, and having to deal with 2 commissioners as opposed to 1 would make it a lot more difficult. So thank you for everything you guys are doing.
Mr. Ratterman.
I'd like to start out by saying that anybody that doesn't think this group worked hard send them over to my house, because I'll tell them how it is, you know. I think everybody in here showed great respect for one another, and Mr. Christopher there did a good job of handling all the debate and letting everybody have a chance to have their say. And with that said, my remarks here, it turned out better than I expected, but I'd still like to give you this. We need Elvis now more than ever. Growing up in Tennessee and Florida in the 60s and 70s, I always felt that the bad old days of prejudice and ignorance had passed, and that we were entering a new era built on hard-won race equality, charity, and a sense that no one was better than anyone else, and this could not be stopped. I'm not so sure anymore now. Lately, I feel like our moral compass has been broken, spinning to intolerance, greed, and hypocrisy, and a meanness that is thick as the humidity in July. Mm-hmm. In times of trouble, I put my faith in Elvis Presley, who represents the South, the best angel. He was a hard worker, and although lived the high life, he never forgot that he had been born into poverty. The man expressed gratitude and humility for all that life had given him. He was a self-made talent. He couldn't even read music. Perhaps the greatest entertainer of all times, born into a two-room shack in Tupelo, Mississippi. In 1935, just up the road from where I went to college in Mississippi. I've been to that small shotgun house, and reflected on what it says about America. Greatness can be born anywhere. Elvis was famous for his generosity, ultimately to a fault, giving cars away, expensive gifts, and other handouts to anyone who needed a leg up. That's how the Presleys survived the Depression. His father, Vernon, was out of work, and the Presleys relied on kindness of family and neighbors to get them through the hard times. Vernon and his father built that two-room house themselves. It was tiny and seemed like the best thing they had, but it ended up being too nice and too expensive for them, for the family lost the house. The family was on hard times, and Elvis, the young boy he was, ended up shuttling between Tupelo and families and friends living in the black neighborhoods, where Elvis famously developed an ear for black gospel blues to supplement his love of old-time gospel he got from his church. Elvis knew what it was like to be dirt poor, to struggle for food and shelter. By the time his talent helped him buy a Memphis mansion, he was already using his money to help others, often quietly, without fanfare. He didn't create a foundation and then have a portrait painted larger than he was from outside donations. He just went out and bought that lady a Cadillac and got that fellow a job.
Mr. Adderman, I ask you to wrap it up. We're past our 3 minutes, but
okay, I got
you
just
to
a
wrap it
little
up.
bit. I still believe in my heart that most people are still more like Elvis, and we are likely to pull over and help somebody stranded on the side of the road. Most of the people I know in Merritt Island would give you the shirt off their back. Most people agree racism and intolerance is evil. Even a preschooler knows it's always better to tell the truth and take the lumps than to lie and evade. And now we're here. We know right from wrong, and I'm asking you to vote for what's right for our community and for Brevard County. Do not be part of a traumatic amputation of North Merritt Island community. As Elvis said, truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going to go away.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Courtney Barker?
Good evening, Courtney Barker, City Manager for the City of Satellite Beach. Following up what Mindy was saying, first I just want to thank you all for all of the the stuff you're doing for this. I can't imagine the amount of hours you're dedicating to this, so we really appreciate it. But what I wanted to make sure that you all knew, and I can see that you're listening and taking out Satellite Beach from, the equation of moving into District 2, and we appreciate that. But I did want to make sure that you were aware of how close South Patrick Shores, Indian Harbor Beach, and Satellite Beach really are. I mean, we all share a zip code, we share a library, we share facilities. A lot of the South Patrick Shores, and I know you might hear from a resident that there is no relationship, but there strongly is. I've lived there graduated high school from Satellite High School. I've been the city manager for 8 years, and I've worked as a leader in Brevard County for over 20 years. So there is a huge relationship with those three communities. Satellite Beach, the city often helps the residents of South Patrick Shores. I can't tell you how many residents of South Patrick Shores call my office thinking they live in Satellite Beach. And, because their address says Satellite Beach. So they call us a lot. We just helped a lady right now. We're working with Brevard County to, get her through the lagoon, plumbing, lateral line grant and things like that. So we do that stuff all the time. In fact, the Homeowners Association for South Patrick Shores actually uses our community center to have their meetings. So we have a very strong relationship, and I do think that it would be a mistake to split that up. It would be very hard for us logistically to have to work with two county commissioners, and I think we do need to all be able to stick in one district. So thank you.
Thank you. Miss Mary Hilberg? You recognize?
Hi. Hi, I'm Mary Hilberg, and thank you all again for your hard work. The direction and the effort that you've done tonight, I think, is commendable. As you may know, the odd idea of creating a minority-majority district has been picked up by the mainstream media. NPR discussed it, and it was embarrassing to hear. And I'm glad that you're not going to be following that and that you've going in the direction you're going. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Lober?
Great, I just want to stop right where I was. Okay, I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you all. First off, Satellite Beach clearly wishes to stay in D4. I don't, from my perspective, and again, you need 3 commissioners to pass whatever you send to the commission to get it to win the day. So from my perspective, I don't have a desire to yank them from where they're happy. If they're happy there, let them be. With respect to South Patrick Shores, I don't have a position. If I get them, fine. If I don't get them, fine. I'm not going to lose sleep at night either way with respect to that. Mr. Fisher mentioned earlier in the meeting that he wishes to use the existing boundaries as a starting basis for redistricting. Apart from the comments that have already been made with respect to that, I would just point out respectfully that all of the other maps, without exception, that are currently under consideration have done this. To my understanding, everyone that's met with James, including my colleague who's no longer here, Commissioner Tabaya, used the existing boundaries and shifted them from there. So I think that's already been accomplished, and we've seen where the different directions have gone. So I think if you're looking at reducing the spread, you have options that have done that. Some of them have been excluded, some of them have been included. As to the spread, I'll just tell you, and I kind of hinted at this last time with respect to not throwing Abby under the bus, but trying to explain why she might be somewhat evasive to answering questions that pertain to how potentially meritorious a lawsuit would be. Namely, she doesn't want this, which we've heard earlier in the meeting is going to be typed verbatim, word by word, introduced as the plaintiff's first exhibit. I don't think anyone's looking for that. Speaking for myself, I can tell you I could care less for the most part about a lawsuit. A lawsuit in and of itself does not keep me up at night. The county is sued left and right. I don't care. It's a part and parcel of living. We get them at my office, sometimes directed to Space Coast Area Transit. Something happens with a bus, sometimes directed to Parks and Rec. We get them all the time. And generally speaking, they don't bother me. What bothers me is not the fear of being sued. What bothers me is a concern that we open ourselves up unnecessarily to a potentially meritorious claim, not something where there's an uphill battle for someone or a very uphill battle. Frivolous lawsuits I could care less about. But we have, and I sent James the direct link to this, so if you all want afterward, if someone wants to suggest that he bring it up, he's got the link on his email front and center. It should be the most recent one he received, the League of Cities redistricting proposal, and it was about 10 minutes and 17 seconds into it. It was either 10:17 or 11:17. It's about 60 to 90 seconds, the operative portion. The bottom line is we have an opportunity either to follow best practice by staying well within that 3% spread, or alternatively, we can choose to push the limits, whether it's with a 7% spread or an over 10% spread, and see whether or not we get sued. We've heard the numbers 3% thrown out there for a reason. It's not to say that it's a hard and fast rule, but if we can stay within that 3%, unless there's a compelling extenuating reason to do otherwise, from my comfort level, when it comes to me later, it's something that I'm going to keep in mind. But if you all want to see it, I can double check the timestamp and he can pull it up for you.
Thank you. Ms. Sandra Sullivan?
Good evening. So I am a South Patrick Shores resident, and we have a Facebook group called South Patrick Shores Families. And I can tell you that it is not as portrayed by the city, how close we are. And in fact, I'm the lady who lives on the dump that dug up all that stuff that determined we got the FUD's eligibility for the former military dump that's under our homes. And I can tell you that in that process, the gaslighting I experienced from the city and the battles I went through. I also, tomorrow night, will be on the RAB board for Patrick Space Force Base and going to those meetings and talking about PFAS coming off the base. And to have the city gaslight again and say that it's not coming off the city, supporting the base's position, and then the following week I find the report where they did the testing. So I would say from the residents of South Patrick Shores, we do not mind being in a different district than the city. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, I would encourage it. And then I would also like to say that we share a commonality because we're adjacent to Patrick Air Force Base as Cocoa Beach. With the contamination coming off, we're closer to the point source. So you know the PFAS is going to Cocoa Beach through the reclaimed water. I would also like to suggest that as Mr. Jason Steele is, I attend meetings for Satellite Beach, and he just got a recent raise for being a lobbyist for the city, that he be asked to recuse himself for any decisions that involve Satellite Beach and in that light. I noticed he was very active as that got debated. I would also, as a side note, and obviously this has nothing to do with redistricting other than making the point of why the city would want to remain in D4. Liz Allward's husband is Kurt Smith's legislative aide. Liz Allward is today on the P&Z board meeting for this week as being appointed to that board. Kurt tried to release the covenants for the Hightower Beach. There's very controversial changes going there with regard to the FCT grant across the road. And he tried to put Jim Barfield on the state FCT governing board at a time when the city is making these very controversial changes. So he has they have a lot of support with Kurt Smith. Maybe a different commissioner might bring some balance there and help represent our community with those needs. Those lands used to be in our community and unincorporated. They were annexed only for the preservation, for conservation use, and they are being monetized. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, members, that's the end of public comment. I guess I should ask this committee if they would like to talk about passing a map tonight, if you've got time. I mean, it's 7:25. I mean, I don't know how in depth we'll get on this. If y'all want to go down that road and see if we can get there. If not, you know, certainly it's up to this committee on what they want to do. You've got dinner.
We got
So,
dinner.
yeah, you've got dinner.
Lunch dinner for everybody.
Yes, Mr. Pavia?
I want to ask James a few questions. In terms of my hybrid proposal that marries Mr. Weiler's with Mr. Fisher's, are you able to tell me what the deviation is for each of the districts?
Yeah, well, close enough, yeah.
Within
sure.
a .3 differential?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could get that to you tomorrow if that's okay. It'd be
Well,
hard for me to do right now.
We know what the issue was in terms of the deviation with the existing boundaries. And we've addressed that with the information that you and Jim had provided earlier. I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the hybrid proposal that I presented, marrying Mr. Weiler's with Mr. Fisher's. I think it's important that we underpopulate District 4 based on the projected growth that's anticipated. It stays true to the existing boundaries to the maximum extent possible. And I, again, move that forward.
I would second.
Mr. Steele seconds. Discussion. Let me just say one thing. I think I've got math accurate here. You know, a lot of this discussion on the beach side is whether the unincorporated area goes or stays or however it works. Keep in mind that's 6,500 people. And that's the difference of PCA 6 that we just changed. So really, you know, if we try to use that map and change that back and keep it, you know, in 4, then we just go back to square one, basically. There'd only be 1,000 people difference. So, you know, we're at a point of having to make a decision on that. And that's really the differential on the map. I mean, you know, it's really where the population number is, that's, you know, that's where it's at. So keeping that in mind as we move forward. Mr. Gattel?
I would disagree with the proposal as stated, because I believe that we would still have population variance that's well outside the bounds that I would be comfortable with. I would like us to get below that 5% variance, and I don't think that is possible with the married map of just the D6, D7 changes, or PCA 6 and 7 changes, and Mr. Fisher's map of leaving everything else the same. We have over 100,000 empty lots in Palm Bay right now that could have explosive growth at some point in the near future. They're ready to build. And so from that perspective, having a variance of District 1 and District 3 and 5 ready to explode, I think we'd have a similar problem very, very quickly. I believe James had mentioned that it was an 8% variance still with those changes.
Mr. Chair, can we do a refresher? I think James might have access to it. The webinar that Commissioner Lober had sent out a couple weeks ago, I think it was like the 10-minute mark or 10-minute, 30-second mark before you take a vote. It's just to talk about the spread.
Mr. Lober just said.
The link.
The link, okay.
And this is from the Association of Cities? Or the, what's that?
League of Cities.
League of Cities, yes, sorry.
And
Okay.
it's 1041, where it talks about spread, if that's what Ms. Hodgers is looking for.
That's
And I'm
correct.
assuming the League of Cities and the Association of Counties use the same guidelines? Is that?
My understanding, sir.
Well, it's my understanding there was this one expert, and I believe he did the same presentation to the different groups. So I think it's pretty much the same groups, the same presentation.
Is that Kurt Spitzer is
Yes.
who it is? Okay.
That's my understanding that we're going to see.
You have the magic mic over there. So, wow, hey, how about that?
It's working.
If James can remember his password, we're going to do this. No pressure, James. Not in the middle of a committee meeting.
We're all watching you.
It's the at symbol, James. You know.
Maybe you can just send us the link when we get on there.
Yeah, there should be a link right as soon as you open it. When you scroll down in the email.
While he's pulling that up, let's continue on with discussion. Ms. Schmidt, you have comments?
Since we've already accepted 3 different plans here, I think we would all maybe, and trust me, I don't want any more meetings either, but I think we would be better off to get those and have those sent out to us in advance of the next meeting, so we don't have to wait until we get here and look at them. And I mean, I think we pretty much agree on what needs to be done, but I think some would probably, I would guess, would like to see what it is.
Well, you have the existing map as it is today. You have Mr. Weiler's map as it is.
I know that.
Okay, and then you have the hybrid, which is the existing map with PCA 6 and PCA 7. So, I mean, I just want to make sure you know what we're working off of, because there's really nothing different you're going to see laying in front of you but what we have in front of us tonight.
I don't care. If they want to vote tonight, I'm ready.
Well, that's up to the committee, obviously, but, you know, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure you know, like it, you know, we could reprint them, but.
Get it. I just
Okay.
don't know if everybody else does.
Okay.
But I'm ready to vote.
Further, were you able to pull it up?
Yeah, it should play now.
And
30-character password.
And he's got to move it into the timestamp that, or do you already have it queued up?
10 minutes and 41 seconds. It should just, there should be a bar at the bottom as soon as he clicks play.
Quality and population is impossible, but generally speaking, you try to get the deviation from the average population as close to 0 as is possible. Generally speaking, a deviation of 3 percentage points or less beyond the ideal population is good. It's important to remember that population means people, not registered voters, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later on. But population is the total people, numbers of people within the municipality. If you have 2 districts with population differences, that are greater than 10 percentage points, that generally speaking raises a red flag.
I think you have an illustration of that, right? That helps us see that.
We do. In this particular case, this jurisdiction had a population of around 15,000 people or so, and you can see based on the new population figures, after you layer the existing district boundaries on, what the actual population was, and then the deviation, and then the percent deviation from the mean. And in this case, we see where the population of District 4 was about 5.5 percentage points over the average. The population of District 5 was about 7.4 percentage points underneath the average. And so the difference between those 2 districts was a deviation of almost 13 percentage points. And in this case, this raises a red flag. There's ways that you can still have a deviation that great, but generally speaking, if you have a deviation of over 10 percentage points, you should begin the redistricting process and adjust boundaries.
Now, you mentioned, Kurt, that there might be some circumstances where even deviations of this size would be justified. What might be some policy goals that would make those differences defensible?
That's right. You can do that. You still would try to keep it not too far over the 10-point rule. You need to have a well-documented record as to why you're doing this and how you're doing this. And again, it needs to be balanced with other criteria. But generally speaking, just a couple of examples would be if the policy decision was made to create a minority influence or minority majority district, or if we knew that there's a certain part of the city that is a very high growth area and you can reasonably anticipate that that area of the city will grow much more rapidly than other parts of the city, you might want to underpopulate that particular part of the city.
I think when I think back on some of the litigation that I've read about in the news, it seems that there have been cases where a map had district.
That's good enough. Much along the lines of what's been discussed. So I think we've got good guidance there. So
the only thing I would say about that chart, Mr. Chairman, is, you 116 people is the difference between 12% difference, deviation. I bet Abby could win that one.
The question is, does she want to win that? So currently we have a proposal on the table, am I correct?
Yes.
Of the hybrid map of as it lays today with the changes of PCA 6 and PCA 7. And we're in discussion. Further comments, discussion on the proposal before us. Mr. Gattle.
Mr. Chairman, can we get a reading of what the deviation is currently? I think I'm reading is 8.78.
Yeah, so this is the population summary report where we get the overall and mean deviations. I was able to quickly do PCH 6 and 7. So this is essentially the statistics you would be seeing for the hybrid map that Mr. Bakriva is suggesting.
I would continue to have objections along the lines of District 1 will continue to be underrepresented, overpowered in voting power, while Districts 3 and 5 are poised for growth with development in the Palm Bay area. I don't think that this map will adequately meet the needs of South Brevard.
Okay. Further comments?
That's what I was wondering.
One, I mean, I think, I'm sorry, I think District 1 will have its growth. I think it's poised to have its growth, and I'm good. I just don't know, because I've seen some reservation with several board members, that should we not have a exact map in front of us with exact numbers and that kind of stuff before we make a final vote,
No. I mean, if we go to the hybrid, that's, if the committee chooses to want that, absolutely, we can do that. And keeping in mind, it's gonna potentially get changed a little bit by supervisor, just making sure that some things line up. But if that's the wish of this committee, that's the wish of the committee. But, I mean, I'm just looking at the defining of where those areas are, and I guess in my head I understand what it is, but if everybody's better off seeing a picture of it, then I'm certainly open to that as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I am, of course, comfortable with it. They're the existing district boundaries that we're all used to seeing, and there are only two changes, and we've seen those before. Mr. Weiler's proposal. James has the numbers up there that he's quickly put together. So I think, if there are questions for James, I understand that, but I think, this strikes a good balance. And again, going back to my earlier comments at the outset of the meeting, it's really, an incremental change because we're going to see a lot of growth over the next 10 years between now and the next redistricting in Palm Bay and in the north part of the county and in Viera. So certainly there's going to be more growth, and I think we're going to have more substantial changes to deal with when we come back for redistricting. But it really makes sense, while we can remain true to the current boundaries, then piecemeal this. I think the appropriate time to make those more sweeping changes are after we see additional growth that we're anticipating in various parts of the county.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jordan first, and then Mr. Still. Go ahead.
Commissioner Lober said something that struck my ear, which was really brilliant on his part. Even though Mr. Fisher said, let's just basically leave it the same with Todd modifying, we all started with the base of where we are today. And so we actually have done exactly what we were supposed to do. I'm feeling very comfortable because of the fact that we started with the same base. And so there was modifications to the base by you for what Mr. Fisher said. So there was some pliability on Mr. Fisher's part as far as where we could go. So I think we're in pretty good shape. I can defend it. I don't have a problem being deposed, if you will. The only question I do have, as Josh was saying, I think we're still at 8%.
Yes,
8%.
8.78%, yeah.
8.78%, and I'm not really sure. It's a lot further away from 10 than we were before. We were at 10.4 or something, now we're at 8%. So I think the only thing is we just have to be careful. Is it smarter for us to just get copies of this thing to look at it in the light of day to make sure that this is what we can all live with and then go forward? So not for having another meeting, but I think it might be smart for us to do that, in my humble opinion.
And you do know that there is a picture of it in here.
Okay. And I'm not clear right now. I got confused maybe here, but is D4 now going to D2? In that picture? D2 would be representing Viera?
No.
This map a little confusing.
Which map are you on?
I'm on proposed changes by Weiler.
Map.
So this picture here, these square,
on PCA on 7?
It says District 4 to District 2 proposed changes by Weiler.
I think he's only suggesting number 6 and number 7 out of that list. And are you looking at, what number does that one say on it?
That's number 7.
Proposed changes area 7.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Fisher. So proposed change area 7, it moves that area east of US 1 that's currently in District 4, south to Peneda into District 2, which is consistent with the existing boundary of District 2 on Merritt Island as well as on the beach side. And then the page prior to that is proposed change area 6, and that moves the area north of the Viera DRI from District 4 to District 2. So those are the only two changes to the existing district boundaries.
So what you see there is that thicker line above, that's the black one, that's the existing. It's overlaid with a red line for the proposed change.
Correct.
But that's the area there that's going from 4 to 2 on 6. And then on 7, again, using the dark, the black line, that's the existing line. And then the proposed change is the darker red, the thicker red line. So those are the only two changes being made to the existing map as it sits today.
Everybody clear?
John?
No.
Mr. Steele.
If I had a preference, I would go along with Commissioner Fisher's first proposal to leave it alone. Unfortunately, after hearing the deviation would be 10.4 and that we could potentially have somebody come in and litigate against us, which we don't necessarily want, it's fine. The two maps that we have now between Todd and John are a toss-up. I mean, they're really almost identical except for one big thing, and that's the deviation on Todd's is 8.4, the deviation on John's is 2.4. Significantly lower on John's, so why would we go with an 8.4 deviation when we could go for a 2.4 deviation? Is it really going to make a difference to Todd? And I don't think, from what I'm seeing, and I don't know the inner workings of the Viera company, but it's 6 to 1, half dozen to the other. So, I mean, I think we could easily come to a decision tonight, and either one of these proposals would be very good with the county commission. And unfortunately, as much as I would like to go along with Robin's idea, I think it's probably smarter for us to go to a deviation that's lower and puts us in a better protected position.
And Mr. Chairman, just to answer Mr. Steele, I don't have a preference between those two options, Mr. Weiler's or my hybrid proposal. I'm trying to strike a balance between the two proposals that were presented, Mr. Weiler's and Mr. Robin Fisher's.
Understood. And that's exactly what it was. It was a hybrid between the two, and that was understood, I think, by the committee when you put it forward. But certainly, there's a risk factor, you know. I mean, is anybody going to say anything about a difference between a deviation of 8 and a deviation of, 2.5 or whatever? Who knows, but we're certainly below the threshold of 10 point whatever. So that's we're in a much better place with the two options, in front of us. Again, we have a proposal in front of us that's got a motion and a second, and we're debating that. But certainly, if we're thinking through this again and want to pull back, then that's the prerogative of this committee. Mr. Gatto.
Can I make a motion to move aside the hybrid proposal for a moment to move over to the Weiler proposal without voting down any of these proposals at this point in time, just for purposes of discussion?
I don't think so.
No.
The point of order wouldn't allow you to do that.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a proposal on the table, so I assume that's Robert's rules, if that's what we're operating under.
Todd would have to withdraw his motion.
Yeah.
I'd have to withdraw my second.
Yeah. I would, Mr. Chairman, I would go back to Mr. Steele's argument early on, the amount of costs to make the change, because I think Mr. Weiler motion, when you start putting all the pieces together, you're moving a lot of voters around, where the hybrid doesn't do that. And I think if you're thinking of one reason why, that would be one that I would be, reason I'd be supportive of the hybrid if I couldn't leave it alone.
And that's, again, if that's something that this committee wants to put into play, it's a conversation to be had.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Hey, look, I count votes for a living, and I can start to count as this process moves its way swiftly through this discussion that we're having. My only opposition, I think I voted yes to the two proposals earlier, because the thought process, and if you remember, I asked the question, is this A or is this the? And the question, the answer was, it's A. As in, we were going to consider those and have the opportunity to come back. Mr. Steele, there's a significant number of changes in Mr. Weiler's proposal that affect Rockledge, that affect Cocoa, that affect lots of other areas outside of the context of that scenario. So my yes vote was based upon the fact of going back to look at those PCAs in totality as a group, as opposed to solving the single issue that may be addressed between 2 and 4. And so I can certainly count, but I voted with the intent of having the opportunity to readdress those, and I'll remain in that particular juncture.
Okay. Further discussions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we bring the two proposals back for a meeting and get the exact number, get the map laid out, and we vote on it on the next meeting.
Second.
Well, we've got a motion on.
You have a motion on.
We have a motion on the table.
Move to table, Mr. Chairman.
Table what?
I'll second that for discussion, but a point of order, Mr. Chairman, move to table what?
Yeah.
Table the motion on the floor.
As in Mr.
Yes.
Correct. And all it takes is a second and it's tabled.
Motion to table has no discussion as per Robert's rules. I'll leave that to Abby.
Exactly.
Got to just vote.
So yes, at that point, you had a
just
current
vote?
motion pending, so at that point, you have to resolve that motion before you can take another. So at that point, they're trying to resolve that.
So but if he's moving to table his, then then there's a second, there's no debate, correct?
That is, I mean, it's a motion to table, yes. I mean, at that
Yes.
point, you would do the vote.
rules, there's no debate.
Right, you would just have your vote.
Right, so the motion's tabled.
Well, you gotta
because we-
vote.
What's that?
You have to vote. I mean, there's a.
Well,
there's a
yes,
motion here.
you've seconded it, so
Yes, sir.
it's tabled, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. All right, so majority says that we table, and now the floor is open for,
Make a motion that we give James a chance to lay it out exactly as Mr. Weiler's plan and how many people it affect, and then the hybrid with Mr. Bokribas, and then we'll come back at the next meeting and make a decision.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Mr. Weiler?
My plan isn't changing, so it's mainly Todd's plan would be the only one to come back with a change with the percentages, I think.
But it would give us a chance to really see the percentages.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm saying there wouldn't be any work for you to do on mine because it's staying the same. It's just his is modifying mine, and that would be the only one that would come back to look at. Is that right?
That's,
His is modifying his, not yours.
Right.
yeah, no, his is, well, yeah, he's modifying his with your two changes.
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
So.
Mine stays the same.
You see how he did it?
Yeah. And I think the request would be, now granted, we don't come back till the 18th, but the request would be as soon as those changes are made, you send those out, and we can post them on the website and have those out there for public consumption. So that would be the request of the committee. So we're in discussion on that. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Bakria?
in all
I think
fairness,
Mr. Bakria had, yeah.
I apologize.
Oh, go ahead. No,
In
go
all
ahead.
fairness to Mr. Moore, I think this is the best way to do it. I mean, if he's got concerns about Rockledge and all of these other areas, I mean, we need to pay attention to that. So I couldn't agree with you more. I did not see those on the map. If you've got something that you feel that's important, I think we need to take that into consideration so that we don't hurt any of those cities up there.
And that's the same map that Mr. Weiler's had in play, since last week. So,
Right, I understand.
I think, absorb it for sure.
Mr. Chairman.
So, yes, sir, Mr. Jordan.
The only concern I have or a request I would have is if we bring these two maps back, then ask the attorney to look at them for acceptability, if you will, for the requirements that we have to make sure that we are following the letter of the law and putting all those caveats in that needs to be in there for sure. Then you can tell us, yeah, we're in good shape with one or the other.
And as far as the percentages and the like, so that's one question I just want to make sure, because I understand the map that would be changed with the deviations of 6 and 7. What's the other map? Was it just Mr. Weiler's map as existing?
As its entirety, Mr. Weiler's map as it
Entirety,
stands,
okay.
yes.
Just wanted to make sure that we understood that, so.
Is there any other information that the committee would want that we don't see, in the data points right now to be added to the conversation for the next meeting?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yes, sir, Mr. Kettle.
I would just ask Mr. Moore and Ms. Minus, since you've mentioned communities of interest that we need to keep together throughout our discussions, if there's any of those that you could lay them on the table tonight or between now and the next meeting, if there's areas that we've overlooked with this map, I want to defer to both of you, as you have expressed throughout this discussion, certain communities of interest that you'd like to preserve.
And one example, Mr. Gatto, would be, I don't have it in front of me. You've got multiple changes on a piece that goes from D2 to D1. Which one is that, Mr. Weiler? I should know that off the top of my head.
PCA 1.
Actually, it's PCA 2 as an example. PCA 2 in his particular one has a significant impact, at least from the lens of different demographics from that perspective. And so what I'd really be interested in just seeing is the new breakdown that results from either Todd's proposed change or otherwise, to be able to know and understand and make that assessment. But several of those were addressed in Mr. Weiler's proposal, but we ended up not looking at all 8. We ended up only looking at 2. And so that was ultimately why I raised the issue. But we'll certainly comment on those and maybe be as smart as Commissioner Lober to write a memo before the next meeting.
If I may follow up, looking at page 2 of the Weiler proposal, I think we have some of the information that you're requesting this evening. Not pushing for a vote this evening, just looking at the demographic breakdown on PCA 1 and 2, which are the 2 going from D1 to D2. Was there something that stood out to you on that page that was concerning to you specifically, or was there, again, trying to understand your concerns and make sure we address them?
One, to me, it is very difficult to make a single change based upon the numerics. We may fix that, but the other implications all need to be measured. And I think Mr. Weiler has gone through ad nauseum a variety. So if you kind of look at his proposal, 1, 2, and 3 are all the same area of the county. Those are all Rockledge Cocoa related changes that don't ultimately touch Viera or address any of those issues. 6, 7, and 8 are on the other end of the spectrum. They all kind of work and live together as a group of changes, and then 4 or 5 are kind of isolated in their own categories. And so, I just picked, 2 as an example, but would like to better understand and ultimately, as the chairman said, Mr. Gatto, I'm happy to live with the will of the committee, and absent that motion to table, it would have probably passed tonight, and so they can thank me for coming back one more time. But ultimately, those 3 areas do bring about issues. We heard from Satellite Beach tonight, and if I had been someone else, I would have been under the assumption that we might have gone forward to start at a base map and work from that base map to have a progressive discussion. The will wasn't going in that direction, and I just expressed my own personal concern about not having an ability to have that discussion.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So basically, you're going to get additional data that basically addresses PCA 6 and PCA 7. That's it. Otherwise, it's the existing map. I mean, you're going to still need to put the information in play, James, for the existing map, for everything else. But, it'll be the changes of PCA 6, PCA 7, which that data is already here, but, it'll all be on one piece of paper with one colorful picture. So, any other comments for the good of the committee before we adjourn? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor.
I heard you. You're a mayor now.
That sounds terrible.
Promotion and elected. That's a demotion from a, but I just want to say that with the comments that were made earlier by my dear friend, Mr. Steele, that, and to everyone, that I have no ill feelings. I love Jason, and, just want to have that for the record. I have no ill feelings about anything. We agree to disagree with all of us, and, whatever it is, I'm totally supporting the majority. But, I love Jason, so, please don't.
Thank you. Well, that's a good note to end on. So
Yes.
with that, shows committee adjourned.
Wait a minute, did we have a vote?
On what?
On the bringing it back to the next meeting?
We don't need to have a vote on it. Well, yeah, we're just keeping our meeting scheduled. I mean,
Okay.
we have the 3 proposals are still on the table, but we've given James direction to bring back more data.
I thought there was a motion by Mr. Fisher, and then Ms. Minus seconded it, so that was what I had it on to Teresa. Were you able to capture that? To bring back 2 maps. And
to bring back
Yes.
Okay, well,
He just said his doesn't change, but I guess you're gonna bring back one map.
I just had a motion and a second, so I just wanted to
Okay,
make sure.
I'm sorry.
And I don't know if Teresa had caught that or not.
I'm out of order.
Jim
I
is-
resign from this position, made effective immediately.
I believe Jim has the same notes as well. So
Okay.
Just,
So
we were looking for. a
we
vote.
didn't adjourn because,
I wouldn't let you.
yeah, you wouldn't let me. So we have a motion and a second by Ms. Minus to bring the two maps back, but the one map's already coming back. It hasn't changed. But the other one is the data of
Correct.
the existing map as it is with the changes of PCA 6 and PCA 7 in a document such as this that James will distribute to the committee via electronic distribution as soon as you have that.
And I will review it per Ms. Hodger's request as well.
Yes, yes. Okay. So that's the motion. All in favor, signify by saying yay.
Yay.
Opposed, nay. Seeing none,
And
motion,
that is October 18th, is that correct?
yes, that is correct. That motion passes, and with that, the committee is adjourned.
Go Buccaneers.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.